Sorry I'm late.
Not even. All right. Looks like we are live on YouTube. And are we recording? There we go. We are now. Perfect. Everybody good? All right, let's do this. I will officially call this meeting to order at 5:02 p.m. This is the regular March board meeting for the Altadena Library District Board of Trustees. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. And we will jump right into our agenda with our roll call. Trustee Andrews.
Here.
Trustee Capel.
Here.
Trustee Cervantes.
Here.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Here.
Well, great to see all of you guys. We've now been doing this for a year virtually, so that's a thing that we're good at now. All right. So we've got our agenda in the package. Before we adopt the agenda, is there anything that needs to move around, be reordered, deleted, anything like that? Any changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, then I'd like to ask for a motion to go ahead and adopt the agenda as it appears in the board package.
I move we adopt the agenda.
I heard Rush first, so I'm going to go with him, but Terry, would you second?
Yes, I second that.
Perfect. All right, motion's been made and seconded. As always, because we are on Zoom, so for the benefit of the folks who are tuning in via YouTube and other places, we will do a roll call vote on everything. So to adopt the agenda, Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Cervantes.
Aye.
And Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
I vote for me as well, so that's unanimously adopted. Diego says that as of right now, we have no public comments on any non-agenda items. As always, so we will be really flexible with that. So if something comes in later via YouTube or via the phone, we can always address it then. But at this time, with no public comments, we'll move on to our consent calendar, which begins on page 3 of your board package. As usual, I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar, and then we can chat briefly about anything in there that you guys would like to discuss. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Okay. All right, motion's been made and seconded. Anything that anybody would like to chat about in the consent calendar? This includes your minutes from February, as well as all the departmental reports on pages 8 to 16. Camila. Uh-oh, Camila, we can't hear you for some reason. Doesn't look like you're muted, but I just can't hear you.
Now?
Oh, there you go.
Now? Okay.
Now we're good. Yeah.
All right. I took the headphones out. I just wanted to say the small one and I had an opportunity to do the story walk for the Thank You book, and it was really, really lovely. I took him and we had a little play date out in the library and we did the story walk and we read the book. It was really cool. I appreciated it. And I told I'm blanking Helen that if there was one for April, that it would be ideal for my son's birthday. We might go and do a story walk and then have a picnic out in the yard with some of our neighbors. So it was really a nice thing.
That is lovely. We have a comment from Mealing that I'm going to just read into the record. She says, "Yay, I'm glad you and your son enjoyed the story walk." I did it too. It was really fun. I didn't have a kid to do it with. I just did it, but it was great.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. It just so happened that one of his little friends from school, it was his birthday, and I bought him that book. And then I saw either a notification on Facebook or something that was the book for the story walk. And I thought, perfect. So we met there. He opened the gift, and we did the story walk together. So it was really cool.
That's awesome. I love it. Rush, I saw a hand from you, please.
Yes, thank you, Katie. Just a couple of quick questions on the reports. They're very, very thorough, and I appreciate the extent to which they covered everything. Maybe this is for Diana or Nikki. There was one statement where, as part of the summer engagement work, they connected with the Union Station Homeless Services to learn more about the organization. I was curious as to what they learned, if that's something if there's anything we glean from that organization, which we're going to need to incorporate here in our libraries. And that's the one question. Then I have a question about the facilities. So maybe I'll pause and wait for a response to my one question.
Victor or Diana, do you want to speak to that?
Seeing if Diana wants to speak first.
Hi, thanks for the question. I just did a preliminary interview with a Dana Bean from Union Services, and I was asking her questions about the history of the organization and how big were they, and how is there any way we can really support their organization. So I got to learn a lot about Union Station. They're probably one of the only organizations in the San Gabriel Valley area that provide services to homelessness in the area. But our plan for this summer engagement is really to sort of shine a spotlight on local organization through our social media accounts, and sort of shine a light on the work that they're doing, and then connecting individuals and different organizations to these to the work that they're doing. I don't know if Victor wants to talk more about it.
Sure, yeah, I think you captured it well. But basically, as I covered in my previous board report, the work that we're doing right now has a lot to do with connecting with populations that we haven't served sufficiently in the past. And we're doing that through partnering with organizations and learning more about organizations that serve the communities and populations that we might not be sufficiently connected to. And obviously the population of those experiencing homelessness is a population that we do serve in public libraries. And we want to make sure that we can serve them as well as we possibly can. And so deepening our relationship with Union Station is one of the ways that we're doing that currently. And so the outcomes of this are still to be determined, but we will continue this work, and we'll be reporting out on that again in April.
Rush, you're muted.
Oh, thanks. Thank you for that. And just one other quick question. Kudos to the staff. Looks like the Altena Library District is the first library system in the United States to become certified through the American Green Zone Alliance. Yay! I just don't know what it is. So congratulations, but can someone explain what it is?
Jonathan, would you like to answer that one?
Sure. How you doing? So good afternoon. So the American Green Zone Alliance is a organization that supports, and they really are into wanting to to bring down emissions, gas emissions on on landscaping products. They were featured with a Kona meeting. They came up and were here in Altadena, and they are part of the SCAQMD process. And so they came upon us, and they saw that we were using already. I started using about 2 years ago some electrical electrical landscape equipment such as blowers and hedgers. And so they just wanted us to, they saw what we were doing, and they saw that we wanted to improve more. So you know how our lovely Altadena loves our blowers up here. So we were trying to very much trying to incorporate, not to have that so much. So through this organization, we were able to reduce our emissions. And this is started in California, but it's going through most of California. And South Pasadena is all AGSA certified. They're using nothing but electrical equipment for their landscaping, and we have become the first certified from their organization to use those type of materials. So we are the city is very pleased with what we can do and how we've been saving the ozone layers per se.
That's great. Thank you, Jonathan.
You're welcome.
Kudos to you and your team.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments from anybody?
I have a few. This
Oh.
is Jason.
Okay, sorry, Terry. We'll come back to you in
No
just a second.
You want to go, Terry?
No, you go.
Okay. So it's also really great reading through these reports to see some of the overlap that's happening, and especially, some of the stuff that staff are up to that's going to feed into other things. So, and there's like a whole bunch in here that just, I think, reinforces, really the kind of outsized influence that little Altadena is playing in the library world these days, thanks to our amazing staff. So hearing again an update on our staff's participation in the library design project, and how that's, they're now being asked to present, to all these different meetings and to different groups. I think once we get further into the facilities work, I would love to have a more detailed presentation to the facilities committee on what the staff came up with, and figure out how we integrate that going forward. The story walk was just a really creative way to provide services during the pandemic, and I'm kind of excited to see how we expand that even beyond the library footprint. Maybe we use the little free libraries as a way to do that. I'm not quite sure, but I think there's a big opportunity. And in the team report, again, another area with the radical rest that we started, where that's now being looked at by other library systems. And so that's really cool. Using our teams to help with the mapping and the community mapping, again, an amazing idea. And then I think this would probably be a Diana question, but seeing that we've grown to 14 learners at Bob Lucas, in the literacy program, it seemed like it'd be interesting to hear how we've been able to grow like that, especially during the pandemic. I think I remember at one point we only had 2 when I first started on the board, but so that's just, again, really amazing to see. So thank you to all the staff.
Hi, Jason. It hasn't really grown. I think it's more some of our learners are coming back. During like the pandemic, they did sort of take a break, so I wasn't recording them as active participants. But they've been coming back, and a lot of our learners, we have a pretty good retention rate, and the learners who are currently tutoring with a volunteer right now, they've been with the program for at least over a year. So they're just coming back and staying with us and working slowly and with their tutors.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Terry, please.
Just to comment about the report regarding the restoration of the George Gardner Simons painting. That was really great to see, and Nicole Fabry did a good job. I know Chloe was involved with that as well in terms of the displaying what it looks like now and so on. I can hardly wait to see it in person. But it did occur to me, especially as Camilla, the art restorer, was talking in the video that was made about this, what a thread of history runs through the Altadena Library. And she mentioned a couple of times that the restoration effort will add 50, 60, as much as 80 years to this painting. And considering that, I think most of it was financed by donations to the Friends and so on, the foundation. I think it's really a remarkable thing, and it looks just beautiful. So again, I'm waiting. I can hardly wait to see this thing.
Thanks so much, Terry. And we're actually going to hear a full special presentation from Nicole in just like an agenda item or two. So I think we'll get a lot more information on that. Okay, any other comments or discussion on the consent calendar? Okay, motion's been made and seconded, so we're going to go ahead and proceed to a vote to approve the consent calendar. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Cervantes.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And an aye vote from me. Perfect. Thank you so much. And As mentioned, that's a perfect segue. So thank you so much, Terry. Next up, we've got a special presentation on art restoration, which is coming to us from Nicole, right?
Yes, thank you so much. That was perfect timing. Let's see, can I share my screen? No, not yet, please.
Give me 1 second, Nicole.
No problem. But to Terry's point, I'm so excited for when you guys can come back and see it. It's a brand new painting, and you'll kind of see a before and after comparison of them, and it's really, really remarkable. Did anyone have a chance to watch the video yet other than Terry? I know he mentioned it. I know it's a little long, but I thought it was very interesting.
I thought it was terrific.
You can go ahead and try it, Nicole. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Thank you. There we go. Okay, can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so this is just a brief presentation on the restoration of George Gardner Simmons' Millard Canyon at Granite Gate that was done by LA Art Labs last year. So a little bit of background on George Gardner Simmons. He was an American Impressionist plein air painter, active in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Millard Canyon at Granite Gate is a large oil painting on stretched canvas, and it was completed in 1896. And here you can see there is a portrait of Simmons there in the upper right corner. That's circa 1920. And then these are a few of his other paintings. So that top left is a painting of the Laguna Beach coast. And then just under that is the Grand Canyon. And then there's an undated autumnal scene there. You know, and he's not particularly well known among American Impressionist painters, which is unfortunate because, as you can see, his paintings are really, really beautiful and really exemplary of the American Impressionist movement. He has a lot of paintings of the West Coast, up and down the West Coast, and a lot of the American Southwest. So if you're not familiar with his body of work, I highly encourage looking into it. He does have some really gorgeous works. So as to the provenance of our painting, Millard Canyon at Granite Gate was donated by owners Mr. and Mrs. Guy Fisher to the Altadena Library District in 1975. I found that date later. It's not in the original report. It's buried in an old valuation report, and I had to find it. Since then, it has spent 1 month on display at the USC University Galleries from November 22nd to December 23rd in 1976 as part of the Pack-In Painters of the American West exhibition. And then from November 26, 93 to February 20th, 94, it was part of an exhibition at the Laguna Art Museum titled Loners, Mavericks, and Dreamers, Art in Los Angeles Prior to 1900. Currently, it's displayed at our main library above the Friends of the Altadena Library bookstore. And these are the plates that you can see. These are actually on the back of the painting. So there is a plate showing that it belongs to us. We are loaning it out. And then the USC plate there showing that exhibition. And then the one from the Laguna Art Museum. And I tried really hard to find more information on what a pack-in painter was. It's not a very common term, but I was able to find one report produced by the American Revolution Bicentennial Administration, published in 1976, that refers to this exhibition as Western American landscape paints by artists who packed into the subject areas to paint specific scenes. So that's all I've got. I'll do more research, but as far as pack-in painting, that's what it is. Okay, so a little information on Millard Canyon. Millard Falls Trail is a 2.5 mile trail located approximately 3.5 miles north of the main library building in the Angeles National Forest. That general area is kind of known as Millard Canyon. There is a campground there, as you can see. Those who venture into Millard Canyon can enjoy views of a 50-foot tall waterfall that's pictured on the left, Millard Creek, and the abandoned Dawn Mine, which I've since read is completely closed off, so there's no actual access to it, but you can kind of see the entrance to it. A little bit about the restoration. Left there is a portrait of Camilla Corbella. She was the founder and is the main conservator of LA Art Labs. They provide fine art conservation and restoration services. Their proposal to complete the restoration of Granite Gate was selected at the July 2020 board meeting. Granite Gate was then hand-delivered to LA Art Labs in early August 2020, where Camilla and her team began the process. There were some delays. She did have a COVID scare at her lab, so she did have to shut down for a period of time, but was able to finish in November 2020. And then, of course, unfortunately, the library had to close. We were all home, so it wasn't able to come back as quickly as we would have liked. But it was redelivered in January of 21, and now it's hanging back in its proper place. These are some before images of the painting. You can see there was some damage to the skyline there at that lower left corner of that picture there. And then you can see the signature. It's kind of dull in that corner. There are definitely some scuff marks there, both to the frame and to the canvas itself. And then you can see on the canvas, lots of wrinkling, dimpling. You can see the stretcher coming through, those horizontal bands right in the middle of the painting. And just kind of an overall dullness, kind of griminess. The color, the blue up above is much darker than it's intended to be. And there's not a lot of depth to the painting. You can't really distinguish the foreground from the background as far as the mountains go, kind of on that right-hand side. But in the next image, you can see incredible definition between the foreground and the background. You can see she made repairs where they were needed. The blue skyline there is completely repaired and it's been completely brightened up. There is a little tiny train car. This picture is not great. It's up in the upper left. There's a bit of glare right there, so it's really hard to see. But there is a tiny train car. And before, you had no idea that there was a tiny train car, let alone that there were actual passengers in it. And now you can actually see there are little tiny individual people in there. And you can see she cleaned up where the signature was, so it really pops now. You can really see that. And she cleaned up the whole frame. She reinforced the frame. And it really is, it's a brand new painting, and you can kind of see that here in the side by side. Just restretching it really did so much for the structural integrity of it. It removed all of that wrinkling and dimpling, and just it made it so much more pleasing to look at. It is really beautiful, and I'm excited for you guys to come see it. So there is the video linked on YouTube, and thanks to Chloe for putting that together. Thank you. We would like to offer our sincerest thanks to the very generous donors who made this possible. As Terry mentioned, it was completely funded through foundation donations, so we're extremely grateful to everyone who donated to make it possible. To the team at LA Art Labs for their really amazing work, and to Camilla especially for providing us that video so that we could post it for everyone to enjoy it. And then especially to Chloe for editing the footage and making it available on our YouTube channel. And then if you want additional information about anything, I've just included a few links to LA Art Lab's website. If you wanted more information on Millard Campground, the Forest Service website is there. And then I included an interesting little blog post that the Altadena Historical Society did that has a little bit of information on Granite Gate and on George Gardner Simmons. And then that is the plate that is at the bottom of the frame of the painting that shows the year it was painted and that it was donated. Does anybody have any questions?
I've got a couple of questions. First of all, wow. I mean, there wasn't even light in the painting before, and now it turns out that it's actually a pretty good painting, which was impossible to determine before. So my question is, do we know anything, and this is just curiosity, do we know anything about Mr. and Mrs. Guy Fisher? Like, what's the provenance of the painting before they donated it in the 70s? Did they have it in their collection? Did they buy it at auction? Like, what do we know about it between when it was painted in 1896 and when it was donated?
No, that's a really good question. And I don't have a lot of information on it. It was something that was in their personal collection, but I don't know, how they came by it, if they inherited it, if they purchased it. They did just decide to gift it to us in 1975. That is something that I do definitely want to look into more. I'm hoping to. I think Helen Milner actually is doing a project based solely on library art. So the pieces that we do have, she's really digging into the provenance and how we acquired them and where they were before then. So that's a project that we're working on at the library.
Great. Yeah, I'd be fascinated to know. Any other questions for Nicole? If you haven't watched the video, I really recommend it. It's worth it. Okay. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for that fantastic presentation. And thank you to Camilla for her outstanding work in restoring this piece. It's going to be really fun to see it in person when we can again. And of course, a big thank you to the foundation who made that restoration possible. All right, so that brings us on to the reports section of our meeting. And speaking of the foundation, let's hear from Bridget.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, it was wonderful seeing that painting because I was one of those who looked at that and thought, oh, come on. We surely have more important things to do in our library than restore this old, ugly painting. Well, I was proven wrong. And also for the record, although the foundation gave the money, it was really only because a donor who chooses to remain anonymous came to us and wanted to do it. So, and then other donors generously followed with gifts. So it's not like we went out and raised the money for it, although I'd like to take credit for sure. Okay, we're currently working on, by the way, I always like to begin from time to time reminding people of our mission statement. Our mission is bringing people, ideas, and resources together through fundraising and advocacy in support of our Altadena libraries. The foundation directors right now are really focusing our attention on some of the goals that we set with, particularly we're getting ready to do an annual appeal in April. And it's the first annual appeal, well, certainly since I've been on the board, which isn't all that long. We have planned it, however, every year since I've been on the board. This is the first year we're actually doing it. And we're asking specifically for gifts. We're suggesting that donors can choose whether they want to give to help with our mobile library, whether they want to help with art preservation or literacy services. We're also planning a donor appreciation event in June. And our goal there is to offer a sneak preview of the van before it hits the streets. And then we also voted at this last meeting to reallocate our funds so that we have more cash flow available and more thoughtful investments. We're also beginning now to host the community conversations. I just did one Friday, and for anyone out there listening, if you haven't hosted a community conversation yet, there were only 5 of us. And oh, I mean, Chloe is genius at actually facilitating these and getting people to actually imagine not sort of what they think a library might be or what they think some services are, but to dream instead of just think about what's possible. Dream beyond the possible. And it was just wonderful to have these conversations. So other board members are getting ready to schedule some as well. And then we also prepared a grant proposal and sent to the Tournament of Roses Foundation. And that's for $10,000 to help with our mobile van. We'll know whether we got it or not. I think it's the first week of May we'll be notified. And then in conclusion, we are still looking again or continue to look for 3 more new board members. And that's it, folks.
All right. Thank you so much, Bridget. Any questions for
course.
Bridget while we've got her here with us?
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right. We don't have anybody here from the Friends to make a report. So Camila, when we get to you a little bit later on as liaison, I'll ask you to talk a little bit about what's going on with the Friends. So let's move into the district director's report. Hi, Nikki.
All right, good evening or afternoon. I love that the sun's still out
Still
right now.
light. It's magical.
I know, makes
Very
me so
exciting.
happy. So yeah, good afternoon, trustees, staff, and any members of the public that have tuned in tonight. I also want to thank Nicole for that great presentation. I really appreciate her putting that together. I learned a lot about the painting because of it, for sure. So as I'm sure you're all aware from reading our reports, it's been a very busy month with us bringing staff back to the buildings and launching curbside and passports. On our very first day back, March 1st, we welcomed our new administrative assistant, Diego Gamboa, who was able to work alongside our former administrative assistant, Natalia Romo, for her last 3 days, which was fantastic. She was able to really show him where everything was. He comes to us with a ton of experience, including work with the Imperial County's Public Health Department, Riverside University Health System, and the Sarah Samuel Center for Public Health Research and Evaluation. He has really hit the ground running, with this month having the deadline for the capital project management on his first day and helping us get organized with that review and selection process. We had a facilities committee meeting shortly thereafter, as well as a CFD committee meeting and preparing the board package. So honestly, he's already taught me a lot and is already a great asset to the ALD team for sure. Diego, do you want to turn on your camera and just say hello, face to the name?
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be working with you all. Like Nikki mentioned, I have some experience with working with boards. So I'm really excited to help you all as we move forward, especially as I mentioned both in my interview and as I put in my background, the strategic plan. That's really what encouraged me to apply and to work with you all. I see your vision and I share it. So I'm excited to help you all in the community.
Awesome. Thank you, Diego. I know I put you on the spot there.
No worries.
All right. So yeah, it's amazing to think it's only been 22 days since he started, because him and I have done a mountain of work together already. And he's definitely an expert on the Brown Act. So he will be on our making. So I'm also excited to announce that we posted a position to hire an innovations librarian back on March 8th. The position closed last Friday, March 19th, and we had almost 20 applicants, which is awesome. We've been continuing to get a lot of people to apply. Victor is currently working on scheduling the external panel to conduct interviews in early April. We hope to have this person started ASAP, because they're going to be working at the Bob Lucas branch with a focus on expanding our reach to the underserved parts of the community. In addition to that, they're going to also work closely with Chloe, our marketing and community engagement manager, to create awareness of our materials and services, and of course, to launch the mobile library unit later this spring and summer. So we're really excited to hire this position. As we continue to grow our number of librarians, this will be our 4th now, and fourth or 5th. Yeah, we had 1. Now I think this will be our 5th librarian position. We've been doing person in charge training with the management team and these librarians, so that they're getting experience being in charge of the building, be it on a Saturday or scheduled throughout the week, to give them experience in how to handle situations that arise. So that's been going well. So as I mentioned earlier, we had all staff return to the building on March 8th or March 1st or March 8th. We have most full-time staff working a week in the building and then a week at home. So like right now I'm at home. I was in the building last week. We actually see this changing soon. So in terms of curbside, as I mentioned in my report, we launched it the day after we came back. March 2nd, and we had 98 pickups that first day. So the community was definitely looking forward to having that service come back. And things have continued to be steady, not quite as busy as that first week, obviously, but that's been going well. In addition to that, passport services, based on high demand, started back up on March 1st. The number I have in the packet was before the final numbers came in. They actually processed 51 applications in the first 2 weeks, and they are averaging 25 to 40 phone calls a day to schedule passport appointments. It's truly remarkable. And it's not just, I think, the demand for passports, it's also that our staff members, Tony Aguilar and Natalie Herrera, are fantastic at their work. They get, people refer them, they're referred to them from all over the place. I think I put in my report that we have people driving from Lancaster just because they're so good at what they do. And that's something that the State Department has told me as well. Like, they wish they could like can them and put them in every passport office. So I wanted to give them a shout out tonight. So in terms of expanding services, the management team has decided to open the community room and Bob Lucas the way that we did back in October, to have limited browsing, printing and copying, as well as public computer access on Monday, April 5th. So right now, we're getting prepared for that. We've been working with staff to take feedback about what they thought could be improved in that process. It did go really well, those 6 weeks we were open back in October and November, but we're excited to be able to open in a limited capacity. We're going to continue to offer curbside, but more in an on-demand process where people can call, schedule an appointment, and then rather than like designating staff to do that. Because one thing we did notice in October was when we opened, very few people used curbside. So that's what we anticipate happening again. Okay, so I did also want to mention, if you haven't had a chance to see the wonderful story published by Clifford Moss, our former political consultant, I highly encourage you to check it out. The link is in my report on page 29. So that, I know all of us were really excited to see that on their website. So big thanks to Chloe, our marketing and community engagement manager, for her continued work in partnership with the Pasadena Literary Alliance. This month, we posted a video with Ben H. Winters in conversation with 2020 National Book Award winner Charles Yu about his winning novel Interior Chinatown. And I also did want to drop that in coordination with Earth Day, we're going to have one with a special featuring Barbara Kingsolver and Kim Stanley Robinson. So continue to check out our YouTube page. Our programming content is exceptional. Okay, so I'm also excited to share that the work on our mobile library unit is going great. Chloe, Jonathan, and Christopher are working on all of the modifications, including shelving, equipment, a wrap design, and more. All of them are confident that we will be ready to launch in early summer. And like Bridget mentioned, in coordination probably with a donor event with them as well. I've also been very busy with our 3 RFP processes of late, especially on the scoring matrices for both the Municipal Advisory and Bond and Disclosure Council proposals, which are due to come in on April 1st. And then I would also like to thank Jonathan for his work getting the parking lot gate at Maine motorized. Staff are now able to open and close it using their smartphone. So no worries about like throwing your back out trying to open or close the gate. So thank you, Jonathan, for taking care of that. I know everybody's really happy about it. Woo. So there's always a lot more to share, but I think that's probably enough for tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Any questions?
One question and one comment. So Nikki, I really like seeing the report on the equity, diversity, and inclusion, specifically looking at disabilities and ableism. I think that's another area where it would be good to have a more detailed report, presentation, whatever we want to call it, to the facilities committee at some point.
Sure.
Probably once we officially have a project manager for them, just to hear that feedback too.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then I just want to ditto the shout out to Clifford Moss. I know, we spoke about this after the election in November, but they really truly went way above and beyond what their contract called for. And, they really felt as much of a team and just as dedicated as any of us or any of our amazing volunteers. And so again, a huge thank you, because we owe a big debt of gratitude to them.
Yep, agreed. They were awesome to work with.
Just an update. I was in contact with both Bonnie and Laura this past week following their story about us, and they said that they miss Altadena. So
awesome. All right.
Just one quick observation from me, Nikki. I was delighted to see that the number of new patrons continues to be pretty consistently high, especially at the main library. I guess my question is, how are we figuring that out with folks doing presumably most of their card applications online? Like, how do we allocate somebody to Maine or to Bob Lucas if they're applying for a card not in person?
Yeah, that's a really good question that I think Christopher would know the answer to, unless Nicole, do you know how is it by zip code? Or I'm trying to think, when they set up the card, they might choose a home library.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah. I was just curious because clearly there's some process, because we do have, at least one every month for Bob Lucas, but I'm interested to know what that is. And of course, that'll shift once people are people going to be able to apply for cards in person, presumably, right? Because they'll be able to switch them out now that we're back to
yeah, and we're
services.
actually working on a new library card design that I
Oh,
believe
cool.
we're going to try to launch during National Library Week, which is April 4th through the 10th.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it'll be more on brand with everything else that we have currently.
Got it. Very cool. All right.
Thanks, Nikki. I just wanted to add, you do have to select your home library when you do sign up for an e-card. You either pick Maine or branch.
Okay.
Perfect. Great. All right. Any other questions for Nikki? All right, perfect. Then we will move on to our financial reports. So Nicole, take it away.
Oh, me again. Thank you. Okay, so I am on page 30 of the package. These are the financial reports for January 2021. That puts us at 58.3% of our budget year. So as indicated on the balance sheet, currently year-to-date revenue exceeds year-to-date expenditures, reflecting a net income of about 1.8 million. Cash and cash equivalents are at almost 3.8 million, and that's due to that major property tax installment in December. Total cash with the county is at 3.3 million, and it more than satisfies the amount we need to require our 6-month operating expense policy of 1.9. Total assets are at 7.2, almost 7.3. So any mid-year budget adjustments that were approved have been incorporated and are reflected in these financial statements. So for revenue highlights, we have accounts 4010, 4050, 4070, 4200. Those are all of our property tax accounts. So the district received, oh no, there's an extra dollar sign, ignore that. An additional $36,499.31 in combined revenue for all of those property tax accounts. And then for expenditures, the only highlight I really have is our membership account. We did pay $7,000 to CSDA for our annual membership. Are there any questions about the reports or anything in particular?
Any questions from anybody?
I just feel the need to point out, because the issue hasn't come up in a while and for very good reason. I'd like to thank everybody for this, but we continue to be under budget for our legal fees. So thank you, everybody, and congratulations for that.
Hear, hear. Turns out compliance saves money. Good job.
Leadership matters.
Don't break the law. Crime does not pay anybody except lawyers. I do actually have a quick question, Nicole, and this is maybe not that critical, but I noticed that we are at almost 100% of our revenue, but it looks like we are only at like 80. No, sorry, never mind. I was on the wrong line item. Okay, So I had a question about how we pay the county for tax collection, but it looks like we're at 97% of that too. So do we pay them when the money comes in, or do we pay them on an ongoing basis, or is it trailing, or how does that work?
No, that's a really good question. So it is paid with that major property tax installment in December. They deduct what they are owed for collecting and send the remainder.
So they just take a percentage out. We don't
do.
ever see it, basically.
Mm-mm.
Got it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right. Any other question on financials? All right, that was pretty easy. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So that brings us into our committee reports. So standing committee reports, am I correct in believing that we have no report from the budget committee?
That is correct. There's not been any meetings since the last one, which was where we discussed the mid-year adjustment, which was approved by the board.
Perfect. All right, then that brings us to the CFD committee. And so I'll hand it over to you, Terry.
Okay, thank you. We met on March the 10th, and I apologize for the typo in that first paragraph. It says February the 10th. It was not. It was on March the 10th. And it was our first meeting with all of our citizen appointees on board as well. And it was very clear that we have a really good, positive group with a lot of experience and a lot of know-how. So I think they're going to be very fun to work with, and I'm really looking forward to that. The committee members, by the way, just by way of refreshing everybody's memory, are Amy Lyford, Kim Kinney, and Jim Vitale. Again, really looking forward to working with them. We talked a lot about filling the two positions that need to be done first, and that would be municipal advisory services and also bond and disclosure counsel. And I think that our selection and our reviewing, vetting these applicants is going to be much like what is described in the facilities committee minutes coming up next, and that we will get all of the proposals together. We'll take a look at them as a group. It's a little bit undetermined exactly how we're going to break it down to take care of that, but we have a meeting coming up, a special meeting for the committee in a couple of days now, I think on the 24th or 25th of March, in which that work will sort of be discussed and divided up and so on. And our goal was to try to get a recommendation, much like the one that we see coming up in the facilities committee report next, by the April meeting, the March or April meeting. So obviously not the March meeting, but maybe April, and maybe even sliding to May, depending on how much work we have. I don't know. I haven't kept contact with Nikki about if we've received anything yet. Our deadline is April the 1st, or if there's a bolus of applicants expected at that time. But we'll be prepared for it when we hunker down on our meeting coming up in a couple of days. So are there any questions about that?
So I've got kind of a question / suggestion. So you mentioned it in your report, and I also watched the meeting on YouTube, and I really heard loud and clear from the committee exactly what you say, which is a desire to understand sort of what the scope and responsibilities of the CFD committee are, and then what and how that intersects, aligns with, overlaps, doesn't overlap with the scope and responsibilities of the facilities committee. And I think that's a really important conversation. I think that we did something a little bit different with our CFD measure, so a lot of times there's just a bond measure that is a straight capital improvement bond. And so for those, there are bond oversight committees, and that's a pretty standard structure. But ours is a little unique, right? Because we combined that capital improvement bond money with services and operation bond money, and that's the genesis of the CFD. So it is a little bit more wide-ranging and a little bit differently structured than a standard just capital improvement bond. And I think that having a conversation about what exactly is in the CFD committee's wheelhouse, what exactly is in the facilities committee wheelhouse, and how we can balance those to get the best result for the taxpayers and for the district is a really important conversation. So I have thought a lot about what makes the most sense in having that conversation. It seems to me that what might be helpful is to schedule a joint meeting of both committees. I mean, I don't know that it necessarily would be something we would want to do at a board meeting, just because I would want to make sure we have our citizen representatives from the facilities, or excuse me, from the CFD committee at the table. But just as a first thought about how to start to have those conversations in a way that makes sense, that would be one option, is to schedule that joint committee meeting. We're still early enough in the process, you know, as we're bringing some of these first line consultants on board, that I think we have a little bit of a window of time to do that. But I wanted to throw that out as a suggestion.
Okay, good, thank you. We continue to use that example of our committee being one that takes care of the formation of the CFD and raises the money and so on, and gets involved in bond issues. So we're the folks that raise the money, but the people that spend it, it's kind of a, you know, real baseline analogy, would be the folks in the facilities committee. And that was my way at first of trying to make sure that people who were volunteering for positions on our committee, who thought that they might be getting involved with creative things like, you know, new colors and, you know, architecture and things like that, I, at least at the moment, don't see us playing a big role in that. I see us being more managers of money than anything else. And to me, I don't know about you, Katie, or the others, but I think there's going to be a lot of understanding that comes when we start talking to the first couple of consultants that we have on board. And everybody has told us, or not everybody, but the sources that I've talked to have told us that those are the two most important, because it keeps you, you know, on the right side of things procedurally. It certainly will help with our transparency, I think, going forward. And that's one of the things to sort of stress in the meeting we had the other day, and I made mention of it, is that we do want to make sure that this is a very transparent process.
Yeah.
And to me, if we've got very concrete walls, very defined, you know, boundaries of what we're doing, and we stay within that, and we go by the rules, that will be a benefit to the entire library. So that's, you know, I just don't know enough yet, not having talked to bond counsel and the municipal services advisory and so on, but I think that's going to come with time. I'll look for a chance, like you said, to try to get a combined meeting so that we can kind of hash this out. But it doesn't feel like it's quite the right time. I think we need to develop our committee a little bit more to find out how it's going to work.
I would just further add to Terry's point, and Katie, your recommendation is solid. I think that after we negotiate the contracts with these two service providers, it'll become more abundantly clear as to what exactly they're going to be able to do for us and what the interface is going to be with the facilities committee and the project manager, and they'll help inform that as well. And I think from the collective negotiations of those contracts, we'll be able to really kind of figure out how we're going to support and oversee those contracts and work together and really have that group meeting, like as you're suggesting, to really tease out exactly what the responsibilities are.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I would encourage maybe considering the analog of bond oversight committees as a helpful comparison. Obviously, they are not a one-to-one match with what the CFD committee is doing. That's more expansive, but I do think that there's some helpful, just some helpful guardrails in terms of scope and process and transparency. A lot of those are set up, as you guys know, by statute. We decided not to do that as part of the measure, but certainly we are free to adopt as many of those processes as we feel like is helpful. Any other questions or comments for the CFD committee? Okay, thank you. I'm excited to see what comes next. All right, so that brings us to our ad hoc committee reports. So next is facilities, and Jason, I'll hand it to you.
All right, well, thank you. So I first wanted to just thank the entire committee. So Katie, and then the staff, Nikki, Nicole, and Jonathan. And then, you know, Diego as well for helping us set up a lot of different Zoom meetings and helping with our agenda. We've been very busy. We've had a couple of meetings since the last board meeting, and we're just getting started. And, you know, everybody's really putting in a lot of time and different pieces to make sure this is all moving. So, so we do have an action item tonight. So I'll give the report, but I think Katie, as far as questions and stuff, we want to save that for the action item on the agenda. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's right. Maybe you want to talk a little bit through the process or answer any questions about process, but we can kind of handle the substantive
Okay.
discussion in the action item. That's great.
Okay. Yeah, so all of our time over the last month or so has really been getting to be able to recommend a project manager for board approval tonight. So we kind of had two phases. So the first thing we had to do as a committee is figure out an equitable and fair process that really reflects the needs of the district, so that we started with 10 proposals, and so we first had to come up with a process for how we were going to whittle those down to a manageable number, so we could do our due diligence as far as the interviews and calling references and all that kind of stuff. So we were able to we got that done on March 3rd. We narrowed down to three companies: Citadel, CPM, Griffin Structures, and Rakeland Partners. And then, we then spent quite a bit of time formulating our process to evaluate those three proposals in more detail, and also come up with our interview questions that were weighted. And we spent a lot of time really thinking about not just the questions themselves, but how to weight them. And through our discussions and through looking at the proposals, some of what we thought was going to be our initial approach changed, right? So, for instance, early on in our discussions as a team, we thought that we'd be, one of our most important pieces was going to be evaluating the cost of the proposals, right? Obviously, spending taxpayer money, we want to be very cognizant of that. But literally across all of the proposals we received, there was not much of a variation, to be honest, in the cost part of the proposals. So that's one area where, after seeing that and seeing that the differences weren't really there, we made that less important as far as the scoring of the proposals. And so really what we focused on were their ability to get the job done and be accessible to the district and district leadership. And then their project experience, right? Especially specific to what we're working with. So the historical restoration and mid-century modern architecture. So you'll if you look through the scoring, you'll see that those were weighted more heavily, right? Then on March 10th, we held our interviews with the three firms, where they were all asked the same 8 questions that we established. And we structured the day in a way that we gave 45 minutes for each interview, and roughly 15 minutes for us as a team just to share initial reactions to the interview. So while it was fresh in our heads, and then at the end of the day, obviously spent a lot more time really going around to all the board committee members and really getting into kind of detail about how we felt about each interview, each question, and the responses. But at the end of the day, after going through all of that and doing the scoring that you can see that's included in the board packet, we ended up with a very clear front runner, and that is Rakeland Partners, for a whole host of reasons. Their just how they responded to their initial written proposal was already very strong, and I think a lot of what we felt was positive in the written response was really just strengthened even more in the interview. It was clear that they had put a lot of time and effort into looking at our history, looking at old board meetings and the reports that already exist, and really making sure they were clear about what the needs of the community and the libraries are. I think they probably understood the best the importance of the community engagement piece of this that project manager will be responsible for, and how important it is to make sure we are incorporating the feedback from the community as we go forward with this. So I think that also stood out for us as well. So that's how we've gotten to asking for full board approval for Rakeland Partners tonight. So any questions, like Katie said, any questions on kind of, I guess, the process side and how we kind of got to our recommendation?
Jason, did you have any appeals?
No.
Scoring? No? All right.
No.
That's good. Makes it easier.
Yeah. What's a good part about being public and transparent, right?
Yeah. I was encouraged by the number of architectural resources that they had. And this is really not a question, Jason, this is more of a comment, because I think there was a strong proposal as well. But there were a lot of folks that had an architectural leaning and history that would be applied to this project. And I think that's going to be really important. So just wondering if the others struck you as having that same sort of mix, a lot of architectural specialists involved, or do these people maybe have an advantage in that department?
I think their history and background, also with like historical properties in particular, some experience they had with libraries, I think that kind of set them apart. Most of the other firms that applied, have their architects and stuff on staff. I think the other thing that stood out for Rakeland is how much of the expertise they have in all the different pieces of this, that they're able to access those resources in-house, right? There's a lot that I think we've learned just going through this and looking at the responses that we haven't thought about as far as, stuff that you have to really think about, like how much of it can they do in-house versus having to have a million different consultants, each one of which we'd have to do board approval for, and just which we were afraid would drag things out. And so, looking at a firm that as much as possible is able to do stuff in-house versus us having to hire a bunch of different consultants was also important as well, because again, every time we have to go through the board approval process, that takes time. But if we have one single firm that can really handle a lot of it, and then in return, we have one person to deal with, right? Versus X number of consultants, right? And so I think that was an important aspect of the committee's review as well. Anything else you want to add, Katie or Nikki?
No, I think you covered it. I think, one of the things that we were very cognizant of as a committee is certainly, we're hiring somebody to oversee and manage and advocate for us through this whole process. This is not the person who's going to design the building. This is not the person who's going to build the buildings. It's the person who's, it's the firm who's going to help us make good decisions on who to get to do those things. So for those reasons, it's exactly like you say, Terry, having people inside the Rakeland team who are not only conversant with architecture, but know mid-century modern, know what they're talking about, is hugely important, because it's going to add so much when we are looking at architects, when we're looking at engineers, when we're looking at contractors. We're going to have the benefit of that expertise. So I think it's really helpful, and definitely was a standout feature of their proposal as a firm.
Yeah, and one thing that I would add is when Nicole and I called references, one of the agencies I spoke with, I didn't even mention what our building was or anything like that. And he said, I'm assuming it's a historical building because that's what they love to do and they're really good at it. So it was interesting to me that like I didn't even mention it, and it was like they'd said, these are the guys you want to hire, especially if you have a historical building. So it was all around very positive.
Yeah, they also have previous experience with ARG, which was cool on other projects. Okay, any other questions about process? Again, we are going to come to this as an agenda item, so plenty of time to talk about the pros and cons of various firms, but okay, perfect. Then let us move on. Do we have a report from the redistricting committee? Okay.
Nope, there's no report.
All right, then I will hand it over to you, Camilla, in your capacity as the liaison to the Friends, if you'd like to make a report about what's going on with Friends.
Hello. So this month, the Friends leadership, myself and Nikki and Chloe had an opportunity to meet to talk about community engagement. As I mentioned in the last meeting, the Friends, not being able to be in the library, access the library, have really wanted to, continue to figure out how to continue to be connected to the community. And so we had basically a brainstorming meeting to talk about how they could do that. And thank you so much, Nikki and Chloe, for helping facilitate that meeting. And Chloe, for the excellent summary of that meeting, was really helpful, especially for me in preparing the report. So what the outcome of that was that the Friends would utilize basically a event proposal form that the library has already established. If there is an event that they would like to host or involve the library in, and the goal of that is to make sure that there is alignment of efforts so that, they would not be planning an event that is, already maybe something that the library is doing, so that there is basically, alignment again. We also agreed that the library staff would provide the Friends with some calendar access so that the Friends would be aware of what events were happening so that they could align any efforts that they were thinking of with already existing planned events. And then lastly, that the community conversations that the Friends could be really, really helpful in facilitating those conversations. And so then in their monthly meeting, they, started to talk about how they would accomplish that and utilizing their membership to do that. And I did recently see an email that they sent out to their membership, inviting them to participate in those community conversations in one of the existing ways. And so, I'm hopeful that that will happen. And of course, that will be a really great way that the Friends could support the library in their efforts. Lastly, they're, planning their annual meeting and are talking about some really interesting ideas in terms of different speakers or guests that they would like to have. They haven't set a date, as I mentioned in the report, or a specific topic. But one of the suggestions I found really exciting was to have a panel of existing authors, talk to the community about, the road to getting published or writing a book. And, I find that particularly interesting. So we'll see. They haven't agreed on an event yet and a speaker and the date, but that is coming. And I think that is all.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Camila. Rush, do you want to give a report on Foundation? I know we heard from Bridget already, but anything you'd like to add?
Sure. As usual, Bridget did a great job and covered everything very thoroughly. I would just say overarching comment would be that they continue to look for ways to be able to, expand their footprint in the community and communicate with them. They recently released their first email or quarterly newsletter electronically, working with Chloe. So they're trying to, not only make sure there's a presence of the foundation, but also trying to get very strategically get the right members onto the board that would help them. And of course, their success is our success as they look to, go work in their subcommittees to create these these events to bring in the resources for the library. So overall, that as a result of the strategic planning they did, and now they're putting meat on the bones of that strategic plan, and here the working groups are working very diligently to come up with strategies to implement the strategic plan goals and objectives. It's very impressive what they've been doing. I will say also that when I provided a quick summary of what the board's been up to, that is the district, I mentioned that the February 22nd advocacy letter that we'd sent to Governor Newsom for the 21-22 budget. And they suggested that perhaps we look for ways to expand upon our request, or at least our ability to get support for that letter. And board member Kushan Bell introduced me via email to representatives from Assembly Member Chris Holden, as well as Senator Porcentino. And I've sent an email to both of them, and this is thank you for the introduction. Love to talk to you about this particular letter. And of course, when I do receive a response from them, then of course, then I need to kind of work, with Terry as our government relations liaison, and you, Katie, as well, and perhaps even Nikki. And of course, we're going to have that discussion as an action item here in a moment. But at least there's the introduction's been made, and perhaps this could help not only for this particular budget letters of support and advocacy, but potentially down the road for other support matters. And we do know that those two representatives are keenly aware of what we're doing here in Altadena. But anytime that we have a chance to get their staff to work with us as well on any kind of request from the governor, or just in general at state level, we should certainly take every advantage we can. So I do appreciate Kushan making the introduction, and we'll see where that goes. If I hear a response, then certainly I will tie both Terry and Katie in. Other than that, like I said, Bridget covered most of it. So if you have any questions, I'll take them.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Rush? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. We've got time for some trustee reports. So this is where, if you have anything you'd like to share about anything you've been undertaking, working on, thinking about, percolating on as a trustee that wasn't covered in a committee or a liaison report, you're welcome to share that now. So if anybody would like to share anything, the floor is open. Okay. All right, so that brings us into our new business. Let's just take a quick straw poll here. How's everybody feeling? You want to plow right forward? You want to take a 5-minute recess? We good? All right, I love it. Let's go. New business. All right, so first item, we've previewed a little bit in our discussion in the committee report, but this is the authorization for the district director to contract with a capital project management firm. You've got in the staff report a summary of the process, of course, which we've already talked about. And so, Nikki, is there anything you'd like to add before we get into a discussion on this item?
I don't think so. Jason covered it pretty thoroughly.
Okay. So before we get into making motions, any further conversation, discussion on this? So basically what we're doing is we are voting to approve an authorization for Nikki to go ahead and contract with the firm. We've got a professional services agreement that you guys have seen that was included in the RFP. So that's the standard kind of format that we would go with. Any questions or comments or discussion on this? Rush, please.
It'd just be helpful for purposes of the transparency as far as the authorization to enter into a contract, what the financial limits are or threshold is. Am I quite clear? I understand the process. Yeah. The process was great. I don't know, based on this, I don't see what we're exposing the library to, what the limits are, if there is a limit.
Well, during the interview process, we asked that question basically of all the firms, and the estimate that they gave us is that is typically anywhere from like 4 to 6% of the price of the projects, total price of the projects. So they do charge hourly depending on which person you're working with, it, you know, as the contract goes through the next few years. But again, we're going to have to do the cost estimating and see what we're bonding out and what the projects cost. And we're, you know, our goal will be to keep it as close to, I would say, the 4%, when you say Katie and Jason, as possible.
And just to be clear, this comes out of the bonding funds, not like library general fund.
Oh, I know. I mean, it just went through this whole process, and this is a very, very tight. It's just kind of just be nice to know exactly what the parameters were on the back end. And so, I mean, again, we don't know the exact dollar amount because we don't that we're going to be paying out. This is based on the percentages, as Nikki articulated. That satisfies my question.
Terry, please.
With Rushmore bringing that point up, a good point, it reminds me that one of the observations I made is that we'll be out of the starting gate here fairly soon with the project, director and so on with this consultant, and we won't have landed any money, I believe, in our account from bond sales and so on until some undeterminate date in the future. So it occurred to me that there may be a gap that you have to fill with funds from our general fund if we get if we bust out of the starting gate really quickly with the project management team. So I think that there probably needs to be at least an expectation about when bond money is going to start to come in and so on for us to set the clock accordingly. But that's just an observation. I just wondered if that was taken into consideration.
Yeah, I believe
bridge money though, wouldn't it be, Terry? Wouldn't that just be bridge money? I mean, because it would be repaid by the bond anyway. They're just using the library funds as a bridge until such time that the bond proceeds come in.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
That's exactly.
So we would have to front load basically until the bond money comes in. Nicole and I have talked about that, and we're confident that's not an issue, but it may be something we want to look at as we're preparing the budget for the next fiscal year. But we're also in conversation with our accountant to set up, different accounts to track all of this. So it's very clearly being spent out of bond money versus general fund.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's an important point, Terry. And it is a little bit of a difficult point in the process because we're kind of in this like Ouroboros of we can't cash out bonds till we know how much we need, and we can't figure out how much we need till we hire this person, and we can't hire this person till we have bond money. So, it seems pretty much inevitable that we're going to need to probably front some of the operating expenses to get the ball rolling. But then, within, I'm sure, 8 to 12 months, we'll be in a situation where that can get reallocated correctly.
Yeah, it's a real chicken and egg kind of a thing, but I know it'll
yeah, it'll shake out, but it is a difficult moment in the process now because we have a bunch of unanswered questions. Anything else on this item? I mean, we can go ahead and proceed to a motion in a second, but I don't want to short circuit any conversation or discussion. Jason,
Katie,
anything you want to add? Yeah, please.
Yeah, the one other thing I didn't really touch on it on the report, and I think if people, it sounds like folks have looked at the proposals and they probably saw this, but I would also say that just part of the interview process, we had a question specifically on cost and cost containment and all that, and I think the team from Rakeland and their response to that and their approach to how they do cost containment and change orders and how they manage all of that, like that's also obviously an important piece of what stood out for us, right? Because there's two different pieces to all of this. Like there's what we're paying them and then what they're responsible for containing what everything else is going to cost us, right? Which is a whole lot more money than what we're going to be paying them directly. And so that part of their proposal and their interview was also stood out to us pretty significantly too.
Yeah. And I think it's probably worth mentioning as an observation that, we also had the benefit of some advice from industry professionals and people who do this kind of thing. And one of the things that was pointed out to us as a committee is like, at the end of the day, there are lots of firms who do lots of things, but what you really want to know about is the person who's going to be the primary point of contact, right? The person who's going to be shepherding this through cradle to grave so that you know who you're working with and you're confident in that individual, because you could have a firm with decades of experience, but the person that you have has 2 whole years. And that was one of the things that really stood out for us with Rakelin, is that not just the qualifications of the firm, but our primary point of contact and the people who are the small team of people who are going to be directly responsible for interfacing with the district, for being on site, for working with certainly the facilities committee, probably the CFD committee as well. As staff, we had a high degree of confidence in their professionalism, their skills, their qualifications, and their ability to represent the district's interests in a really responsible way as a fiduciary. So we felt very, very confident about that. And that was a big piece of our decision process. Okay. Then if there's no additional discussion at this point, I'll ask for a motion to go ahead and approve the authorization to contract with a capital project management firm, namely Rakelin Partners.
I'll move.
Okay, I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion or debate at this time? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Cervantes.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And an aye vote from me. So that is approved. Congratulations, guys. We did it. This is the first one down. It's the big one.
Very exciting. Very exciting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, moving on. We have item 8B, which is the review and approval of an amendment to the board policies. Oh, sorry, I didn't notice this before, but Diego, this should say Board of Trustees policies, not bylaws. We changed the language a long time ago around the role of the government relations liaison. So basically, the long and the short of this is we have a government relations liaison, which is Terry right now. And one of the things that has traditionally has been a practice of the government relations liaison is to vote on stuff or handle stuff in which ALD is involved. So for example, like LAFCO has elections, CSDA has elections. There are things where, we are involved as an entity. And we realized that the board policies do not actually empower the government relations liaison to do that. So we thought that would be a useful thing to amend them to say, given that we've been doing that. And so that is the item here for you to discuss. So you'll see on page 51 of the board package, an amendment to the board policies, which includes item E, basically empowering the government relations liaison to do that. Diego or Nikki, anything you guys want to add?
I don't think so. Mm-mm.
Okay, great. It's kind of a procedural thing of amending the policy to catch up with what we've actually been doing.
I will add one thing for this, Katie, and that is a little bit of the genesis of this whole thing. We had an open item, and it had to do with our vote with LAFCO for the candidates for the redevelopment oversight committee. So there were a couple of candidates, and I had interviewed one of them. I didn't get a chance to talk to another. But what happened is that one of the candidates withdrew their name, leaving one standing. Therefore, there was no vote to be done on that particular one. So that clears up a little bit of the item that sort of drove this whole thing. And then another comment, I was very appreciative of Rushmore's comments before about collecting information that they could send on to me, because I need all the help I can get. If you've got an issue that needs presenting or whatever it might be on the government side and you know about it, if you could send it to me, I'd really appreciate that. And that way I can make sure we're keeping the pipeline filled with information about that.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And I think we might as well chat about it now. One of the things that, as you guys will see, is included in the wheelhouse of the government relations liaison is attending legislative days in Sacramento to represent the district. This year, those special district legislative days are scheduled virtually May 18th and 19th. And so normally the government relations liaison would do that. But it turns out they have a buy one, get one free registration. So we can send at least one other person at no additional fiscal impact to the district. So I point that out for the purposes of saying, if you feel like you would like to do that, you can certainly let Terry or Nikki or myself know, and we can figure it out. There's also no rule saying we can't all go. Every single one of us could go and advocate for library interests and district interests. So just to put that on your calendars, May 18th and 19th, special district legislative days happening virtually, so a little bit easier than having to get all the way up to Sacramento.
Just, I guess, a follow-up question to that. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you or Nikki would know, but is there any specific statewide legislative stuff that the CLA is pushing for right now that it be particularly worthwhile for us to participate to support?
There's typically a legislative day, but again, everything's moved virtually. Another thing that they do is they call it a day in the district, and like the libraries that fall in that assembly person or that senator's district, we try to set up a meeting with them, but that's typically like me or someone from the system going to meet with them. Like when I was in Glendale, I went to Senator Portantino's office, which was right down the street, and we met with him. Beyond that, I haven't heard anything else. And I think probably it's largely due to COVID, but I'll find out if there's going to be a library legislative day. And if it would work or help to have the board members involved, I'll definitely get you information on that.
Great. Any other discussion on this item? So again, the action item here is to amend the board policies to include an authorization for the government relations liaison to go ahead and vote on the district's behalf when appropriate. So hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve this amendment.
So moved.
All right, thank you, Camila. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any further conversation, discussion, debate on this item? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Cervantes.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And an aye vote from me. Thank you so much. So that is now updated. And now our last action item is, as usual, we have another policy update for you. So this is the approval of the unattended children policy as it appears in your package. Nikki or Victor, do you guys want to speak to this beyond what's in the staff report?
Yes, I'll be happy to speak to this. Good evening, everyone. So as you know, we are working our way through the policies and procedures, updating existing policies, but also introducing new ones to provide additional clarity, both for our staff in them doing their work, but also for the general public in terms of our expectations for people when they visit our buildings. One of the policies that we did not have was an unattended children's policy. And we have introduced a new one that basically lays out how staff should handle any situations involving youth in the library that is unattended. So that's pretty much it, and I welcome any questions or comments.
Thanks, Victor. Any questions on this policy? Camila, go ahead.
I was curious, how does the public, how are they made aware of the different policies, just not even just specifically with this one, but in general, so that they would know what to expect with the unintended minor?
Sure. Our policies as they are introduced are posted on our website. That's the main way that we introduce them to the public. We also, as we recently approved the borrowing policy, we are developing new materials for when we have in-person services again, where new cardholders would get a copy of the borrowing policy when they're handed their library card. Another key policy, I think the main behavioral policy that we have as a library is the code of conduct, which we will be bringing to you shortly as well. And we will maybe be making copies of that available to members of the public in the library as well, both on an as needed basis when we discuss behavior with them, but also they will be available at the service desk as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Victor on this? I'm glad that we have this now. I'm a little surprised we didn't have one before, but as every time we go through this process and we discover new gaps in the policy manual, I'm very glad to see us filling them. All right, if there's no further discussion or any other questions, then I will go ahead and ask for a motion to approve the unattended children policy as it appears in the board package.
I move to approve the unattended child policy.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I will second.
All right, bravo. Motion made and seconded with feeling, which I like, you know. All right, any further debate, discussion on this item? All right, we'll take a roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Cervantes.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And an aye vote from me. So that is approved. Thank you so much. All right, we are almost there. So item 9, as always, is governance. So what I wanted to flag in our governance conversation this evening is just a reminder that training and educational opportunities are always available to us as board members. So I've asked Diego to collate some of the upcoming opportunities that are available through CSDA. I know CLA has some online offerings coming up through their annual conference. And so for all of us, I think it's a good opportunity to get in touch with either Nikki or Diego one-on-one and see what it is that we'd like to learn in the next couple of months and what it is that is available. As you guys realize, of course, everything is being done virtually. So lots of stuff that normally would be happening in person, like CSDA's annual conference, all that's going to be online, but lots of good opportunities out there and lots of stuff to learn. So I would encourage everybody to take advantage of that and reach out to Diego to see what's a good fit for you and what's on the docket.
If you don't mind, Katie, I did compile a couple of our upcoming meetings and
there you go.
So I'll go ahead and email the board.
Perfect.
Just so that you all know what's upcoming, at least through the CSDA. I'll continue keeping a lookout for additional trainings that you all might be interested in or might find the value.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And just a reminder, I'm sure you guys have all seen it in your email inboxes, but if you haven't filled out your Form 700, go ahead and do it. You can do it online. We got to all do it every year as part of the deal of being an elected official. So fill out that Form 700 or Nicole will hassle you until you do. Don't make Nicole hassle you. Fill it out. And I say that as somebody who has not filled hers out yet. But I think the deadline is April 1st, right? So you got to do it pretty soon. Yeah. Get it done. Or maybe Diego will hassle you. Who knows? Somebody will come and let you know.
Diego, I'm going to be contacting you about that because before Natalia left, I believe she emailed me that mine was okay, but I keep getting the emails that I need to fill one out. But when I tried to fill one out, it's not allowing me to fill in the dates. The dates are for a previous period. So in either way, I'm going to contact you to make sure that I'm okay before April 1st.
Yeah, that's not a problem. I'll go ahead and also send a reminder to everyone just so that you all know where the link is. I know it could be a little difficult to do it via the computer. So if that doesn't have that, you have any issues and they're not able to resolve them quickly, we can also do a mail-in as long as you submit a original copy that we can send with a WEX signature. That's what they require. And we can postmark it so that it comes in and is considered on time.
And Diego, this is Terry. You indicated you would be in the office tomorrow if I wanted to drop mine by, right? Okay. Is there a good time?
All week, 8:30 to 5:30.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions on the 4 and 700? And Katie's right. I think it's going to be me that's going to be asking.
There you go.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thanks very much. So keep an eye out for that email from Diego. Sign up for something, learn something. It'll be great. All right. Any announcements, proposed future agenda items, anything somebody would like to see on a future agenda? As always, you can just send those to me, to Nikki, to Diego. We'll make sure they get on there. But this is the time where if there's something that you've got at the top of your list, we can calendar it right now. Okay. Pretty efficient, guys. Well, if there's nothing else, that is it for tonight. So I would like to invite anybody who feels so compelled to make a motion to adjourn.
I will motion to adjourn.
I second that.
All right. Motion's made and seconded. Any objection? Hearing none, we are adjourned at 6:37 p.m. Thanks so much, guys. Really
All right.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Have a great night, guys. See you
Good to
next
see all
time.
of you.